So first up, Bill, what is your strategy, or what are your strategies for balancing the state budget?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. It's kind of a nasty night out there, and it was kind of a fun drive coming down from Cloquet, so I feel like Yogi Berra. It's deja vu all over again, because I was sitting in the same spot right next to Tony just an hour and a half ago up north. But the state budget, you guys may have shaken your heads several times when you watch the news at night and want to know what they're doing down there. And the way I see it, they look at what's going on in the economy today. If the economy's good and the weather's not an extreme, you know, maybe the Twins are winning, tourism's good, small businesses are successful, and the economy's looking pretty good, they do these budget forecasts and they say, oh, we have some money we can work with. We're going to have this is something that's going to be coming in for a while. Well then, you know, things change, you know, stuff happens. You know, the economy might slow down, you might have some weather issues like the big storm we had up in the northern part of Pine County up to Duluth this summer. We have things that cause problems and cost us some money. Unemployment, struggling families, things that come up and the businesses struggle, and all of a sudden we got a deficit. So maybe we have some money and then we don't have money. That keeps this roller coaster ride all the time. And what I'd like to see is that we don't borrow from funds that are earmarked for something else. If it's earmarked for that purpose, that's where it stays. And we've been taking money from education, taking money from other budgets. That shouldn't be done. We used to have some rainy day funds. That's the way all of our families operate. If you have some extra money sometimes of the year, or one particular year you do better, you don't just go and spend it all that particular year or that biennium. So the way I would balance the budget would be common sense. Don't overspend. Use realistic numbers. Use factual things as much as you can. And if there are some programs that are obsolete, maybe they're being replaced by something else, you get rid of them. You know, we used to do that a lot in your own private life. If something's not working, you get rid of it. So it's common sense principles that I would employ. We follow it and we don't overspend, and then when the economy turns around again, we will have revenue to offset the expenditures that we've had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Second in the first round on this question, Tim Faust. Tim, what is your strategy, or what are your strategies for balancing the state budget?
Well, first of all, I also would like to thank all of you for coming here tonight. I'd like to thank the Pine City Area Chamber of Commerce, the Window Services, Pine Technical College, and the Student Senate from here. I think that the most important thing we need to do is we need to come up with a balanced approach to balancing this budget. We need to find things that we can eliminate. There are duplication of services between state, county, and federal that we need to take a look at. And we need to find those things and eliminate some of those things, because we don't need duplication of services in times like this. So we need to find things that we can cut. We also need to find areas that where we can gain some efficiencies. One of the things that one bill that I introduced was called an RTI bill, and what it did is it significantly improved the learning in schools. 50 schools introduced the RTI program because of the bill that I introduced, and people that have schools that have done that have less students in special ed, they have higher test scores, and it costs them less money in the long run. And so we need to find more areas where we can do things like that, because that creates efficiency, lowers cost, and gives a higher performance for the students. The third thing we need to do is we need to increase some revenue. And I believe that we need to increase the revenue on the people making over $250,000. If you look at the tax incidence report, you'll see that people making over $250,000 are paying a lower percentage of their income in taxes than people that make a tenth as much as they are. And I think that that's not right, and so I think that that's the third thing we need to do to balance the budget.
Thank you. Third on this question, Ben, what is your strategy, or are your strategies for balancing the state budget?
First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight as well. You know, participation is what makes our democracy so great, and I just want to encourage each of you to go out and tell your friends to vote on Election Day. And Then to get to the question, the strategy for balancing the budget. Well, first of all, you have to have solid fiscally conservative principles to start with. You can't take projections, because if those projections are wrong, then you end up with a deficit. What I would start with is I would start with the revenue that was generated in the last biennium. If you look back through the last several decades, revenues have gone up every single biennium. So you start with that number. And from that, you would first pay back the gimmicks that we used, that were used to pay for the $6 billion deficit the last biennium. So you pay back the school shift. The surplus that we've had in the last 20 years has paid back the required reserve funds. So you start with that number, you immediately take off the school shift, and then from there you live within your means as a state and as each individual budget area. They need to develop their budget so that they stay within the means, stay within those revenues that were received last year or the last biennium. And then after that, if there's a surplus, then we can move towards paying as we go instead of borrowing money with bonding bills that our children will have to pay back. So as we move along, we'll eventually lower each successive year the amount of money that we're paying towards debt service and towards interest. And by holding to sound conservative principles, we can, over time, ensure that we aren't faced with $6 billion deficits, that we have to take money away from our schools and our children to pay back. In 2010, they moved from a normal 90-10 school shift to a 70-30 school shift. And then in the last biennium, they moved to a 60-40 school shift. Part of that's been paid back, but we need to get to the point where we're not stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We're not stealing from our children to pay for our deficits. Thank you.
Finally, on the first question, Senator Tony Laurie. Tony, as a what is your strategy, or are your strategies for balancing the state?
Thank you, and I guess I will take a couple of seconds to thank the Pine City Area Chamber of Commerce, and Window, and Pine Technical College, and their Student Senate as well, and thanks to all the participants for giving of your time and coming out tonight. Participation absolutely is key to our democracy, and I'm very proud to play a role in this. First off, Tim Faust is absolutely right. We're going to need to take a balanced approach to solving our budget deficit. For far too long, we have been kicking the can down the road over and over and over again. And we need to take a good look at how we do business. In the last biennium, in order to balance the budget, Mr. Weiner mentioned the $2.7 billion we borrowed from our school kids. That's no way to balance the budget. We also sold 20 years of our tobacco bonds. Those are revenues that we typically put into public health intervention strategies that really are effective in our communities. We sold 20 years of those to spend last year. That's no way to solve our budget problems. Mr. Sommer mentioned, actually what he was getting at was the fact that our budget fluctuates so greatly is a serious problem for those of us in St. Paul trying to budget. In times when the economy is clicking along, we probably have a bit more money than we need, and the needs are lower in our communities. But then when we go into really tough economic times and our budgets shrink, is the very time when our people really need intervention of our public services. And we really have to be there for them. And so this fluctuation we really have to get at. Even Governor Pawlenty recognized this problem and created a 21st century tax reform commission. I mean, we have 20th century tax code for 21st century problems. And we were going to take a good look at being bold about true tax reform and try to level those revenue streams so that we wouldn't constantly be in these budget shortfalls and kicking the can down the road in a manner that really hurts people. When we undertake this endeavor, one of the key things that I'm going to have to look at myself is the fairness of our tax code. And as we've kicked the can down the road and pushed the burden of our tax system more and more on our property taxpayers out here in greater Minnesota, it has become more and more unbalanced. There's a 4% differential between those in the top tier of incomes and those in the middle and lower tiers of incomes, and that's absolutely wrong. So when we undertake this, we're going to have to be bold about it and be honest about where the revenue is going to come from, and those who have done well are probably going to have to help out a little bit.